It's fitting that Elden Ring, a game with a premise built upon the literal shattering of all order and convention, has itself shattered innumerable records, perceptions, and DX Racer gamer chairs. No, seriously, like, I want to get into the review and all, but there's so many clips of this I want to show. Are these bits? Are these people putting this on for content or clips, or I don't even know anymore, man. I mean, wow. Tyler 1, take a bow. Elden Ring was not only the biggest game ever made by Soulsborne creators From Software, it was also their most revolutionary. Elden Ring is open world. Elden Ring gives you a horse with a double jump. Elden Ring has a man with a Northern English accent who is not depicted as a peasant or a total moron. Elden Ring lets gamers hug women. If only the you from 4chan could see yourself now. And by virtue of clicking on this video, Elden Ring has let you summon the intangible visage of a parasocial companion once again. Though I, your host and equivalent of a random NPC encounter, will not be aiding you in your battle against Mohg, Lord of Blood, I will do you one better and present to you another edition of Hard Drive Reviews, where the words good, bad, and all of their myriad synonyms are as banned as Hoaraloo, chieftain of the uncool lands. So dry those mimic tears and indulge in some rare FromSoft related levity with the Hard Drive review of Elden Ring. This game is huge and there's a lot of ground to cover, so let's delay no further and let's get rolling. I don't want to hug women anymore. What was I, a British person, doing when Queen Elizabeth II died? That's an interesting question. I was in approximately my second consecutive hour of fighting Margit, the Fell Omen, and it was at almost the exact moment that I finally killed him that I looked over at my Twitter feed and saw that the old pedo shield had finally croaked. Some would call this an auspicious coincidence. I, a firm believer in willpower and manifestation, would call it business. Coincidentally, Elden Ring shares many similarities with my now dead monarch. Whilst many moments of its reign over my life were grand and draped in proverbial gold, it really did overstay its welcome quite a bit, and in its latter stages I found myself somewhat hoping it would die too. It also housed countless secrets, many of which, upon looking up online, filled me with a quiet, seething rage. Not the kind that makes you shout or throw things, but the kind that builds slow, insidious contempt over time. Down with the monarchy, down with almost every NPC side quest in this game. See, Elden Ring makes many more an attempt to extend the generous olive branch to the player than any previous FromSoft game. Sites of Grace, which function as bonfires, are almost universally placed closer to tough boss fights, largely eliminating previously daunting boss run-ups. Spirit Ashes provide players with a myriad of extra options to aid themselves in battle on top of the pre-existing NPC summons. And its non-linearity means that if anything is still too tough for you, you can just run away for a while, level up, and come back later. So how is it that this game is still responsible for so many smashed keyboards and embarrassing therapy sessions? Well, consider that for every generosity Elden Ring graces you with, FromSoft feel ever more comfortable slowly turning the dial on their oven of clownery. Elden Ring is no longer even helmed by just one diabolical man watching over the creative process. Now there are two. The Ornstein and Smo of pissing off nerds. In one corner is Hidetaka Miyazaki, a man so fundamentally compelled to hate that he has gone on record as saying that he can't help himself in regards to designing poisonous swamp levels that he knows his players don't enjoy. Hidetaka Miyazaki is well aware that he cannot physically assault you and call you slurs with no provocation, so he makes video games instead. Sites of Grace and Spirit Ashes be damned, all the success and publicity has not changed Miyazaki's game design philosophy one bit. And you want to know how you can tell? Early in the game, in Limgrave, the game's starting area, you are very likely to bump into a dragon. Dragons are typically very powerful in FromSoft games, generally late game bosses. Hell, if you're anything like me, you might just bump into this thing as a result of your fleeing another boss, the Tree Sentinel, who is very intentionally designed to be far too strong to kill at the level you'll likely first encounter him. So obviously you run away from this dragon as well, and thankfully there's a very convenient, safe hiding place nearby down a set of stairs in the Dragonburn ruins. There's even a treasure chest inside. Sick. You open up that treasure chest and there's not an item inside, instead fog pours out and you are knocked unconscious and you wake up in a place called Celia Crystal Tunnel on the other side of the world. As you have been teleported here involuntarily, you cannot fast travel back. You are trapped here. You will only be able to fast travel back upon finding another site of grace, which means finding your way out of the tunnel you've just been whisked away to against your will. Simply attempting to then leave this tunnel will see you pursued by enemies arguably as, if not more, terrifying than the dragon you were initially fleeing, and once you finally make it back out through the tunnel's intended entrance, no doubt numerous deaths later, you're greeted with this sight. The most visually intimidating and disturbing location in the game, a plague-ridden mire of disease and corruption, ravaged by misshapen horrors and violent marauders who stalk every corner of this grotesque and forsaken place. Caelid, or as us Brits know it, Croydon. A site of grace can be found nearby with little difficulty, but by now Miyazaki has made his point. Once upon a time, he and his team pioneered the art of interplayer communication through messages people can leave behind and be read by future players through the power of online servers. One day, I predict that he and his team will again pull off a similar feat by spearheading a mechanic in which a player can press a single button near a prompt on the ground and hear the entire FromSoft development team laughing at them through a live microphone. In the other corner is George R.R. Martin, who was brought on to help write and develop the game's lore and world. You may know George R.R. Martin as the man who wrote A Song of Ice and Fire, until he didn't. George R.R. Martin is the world's most accomplished side quester. The answer to the question, what if Santa Claus just stopped delivering presents one year? The final boss in an ending that doesn't exist. He stands as a soul of cinder-like amalgamation of every unfinished story ever started. The incomprehensible, writhing embodiment of every creative idea that ever got too big to be contained. Fun fact, the RR actually stands for which is the sound you make when he kills off your favourite character, or doesn't write a book, fucking whatever, fuck you. In the overall hierarchy of nerds, I put these men's power levels only slightly below Bill Gates and Scott the Woz. So is it any wonder then that Elden Ring, despite its many quality of life additions, remains as infuriating and confounding as almost any FromSoft game prior? You have a pair of supervillain nerds at the helm who have made their names off of upsetting weird little freaks like us, well, like you. Here's the ring about Elden Thing. It's big. How big? Quite big. Okay, really big. Fine. It's stupidly big. On one hand, this allows for a level of freedom in player expression not achieved by even the most ambitious RPGs. For a lot of people, Elden Ring is simply the game you've dreamt about for years. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want. There is a very real level of weight and reactivity to your actions, not just in where you go when, but in what you do, who you meet, who you kill, and what parts of the game you actively choose to engage with and pursue. Elden Ring has so much replayability because every go around has the potential to be so different, and because FromSoft's very intentional avoidance of quest markers and waypoints and the like makes so many of the game's secrets so missable. Try as you might, it will be nigh on impossible to see everything on a single playthrough. And beyond that, so many roles are catered to. There are so many options for combat and character creation that feel thought out, diverse and expansive, but still well suited to the game's main story. You can fight with so many styles. You can fight with swords, or magic, or heavy weapons, or whips. You can even fight with the words. Check this out. You are cringe. Yet, As replayable as Elden Ring may be, I don't know if I ever will replay it. Because, you got me, it's too big. As much as I enjoyed myself during my Elden Ring playthrough, I was burnt out by the time I made it to the mountaintops of the giants, which I'd argue is the start of the last third of the game. Any average playthrough of Elden Ring will feel like a 100-hour commitment, and personally, I like it when things end. You hear that, Rebecca? I'm fine! I think Elden Ring is too big. Playing it reminded me of exactly why Breath of the Wild totally slaps my ass. Do you see how hard it is to comment on the objective quality of a game when I've banned the words I have? Because while Breath of the Wild was also extremely big, and still definitely not as big as Elden Ring, it gave you multiple traversal options, and the simple act of traversing the world was convenient and exciting. I watched an EGX talk not long ago featuring Robert Kurvitz, one of the creators of Disco Elysium. In it, he talks about how he knows that the game's dialogue system, particularly how your own brain and its many functions talk directly to you, totally slaps ass. He then urges other game creators, he actively urges other game creators to steal that from them. He knows that it's genius and he just wants more games to do it. I think that every game should let you climb every surface, and I think that every game should steal the paraglider from Breath of the Wild. Skyrim? Paraglider. Street Fighter? Paraglider. Heavy Rain? I'm looking for my son? Boom. Jason! Specifically, I think Elden Ring should have stolen the climbing and paraglider from Breath of the Wild because as it stands, the only traversal option you have is your horse. And while this horse can double jump, it cannot transform into the equine equivalent of Michael Jordan and clear an entire mountain in a single leap halfway through. You will spend a lot of your time in Elden Ring, literal hours, meandering around on your horse looking for something that might not even be there because it's a FromSoft game, and of course it's not going to signpost it for you, so you traipse up and down the perimeter of big mountainous highlands trying to find a way up, not even knowing that right now there is no way up. This inconspicuous rocky cliff face, I'm looking at you Moonlight Plateau, is randomly locked off from you until you progress in an incredibly cryptic quest line much later on. The horse's balls don't even shrink in the cold. What was the point? Get it together, FromSoft. More like Gonsoft, much like Torrent's cock, which you won't show me. I know that FromSoft games are intentionally cryptic, and often they are in a very meticulous and intelligent manner. In Elden Ring, I wonder if they finally jumped the shark somewhat. FromSoft games are not meant to be convenient or easy, and I think that's a perfectly valid approach when it comes to playing the game. Engaging in combat, navigating dungeons. Exploration is also playing the game, but this, spending hours trying to progress somewhere that you can't but would never know because there's no hint whatsoever, combing back through areas inch by inch in case you've missed something incredibly silly and cryptic, ramming your horse's nose against the same fucking rock over and over again because there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't be able to get up there right now. Wasting hours of your life. That's not gameplay. That's driving around safely in Grand Theft Auto without even any cops to shoot. I have never held any particular fondness for the old Dark Souls boss run-ups because after a certain point they stop being any kind of interesting test of skill and just become memorization with a little bit of luck, entirely repetitive and largely feeling like padding. And though I know and I can see so clearly that so much of its open world is designed with so much intentionality, Elden Ring's exploration often felt like listless, repetitive padding as well. I suspect some people will maintain that this is still a perfectly intentional and therefore intelligent way for the game to be designed, and criticise me for being a big stupid baby gamer for thinking otherwise. And now in their heads they're thinking, well, just because you've acknowledged it, that doesn't change anything. But now that I've acknowledged this exact predictable response, it does change things. I've just thought circles around you and have therefore become effectively uncriticisable, and you can bite me. I suffered all the way to the end of the Carian study hall before it mattered at all. It was a dead end. I could not progress any further until doing something seemingly extremely unrelated much later on in the game. I had to look this up to find out, and in the process got myself spoiled on a very significant part of the game. We'll come back to this. In Dark Souls 1, there's an entire area locked behind literally two illusory walls in an inconspicuous tree. this made me want to throttle someone. In Elden Ring, almost every NPC side quest made me want to throttle someone. If my stance to Elden Ring's world was too big for FromSoft's design philosophy to remain so obtuse needed further backup, allow me to present Exhibit B. The thing about that previously mentioned area is that it's not very important, and more so, the original Souls games' worlds are relatively small and tight by comparison. Time consuming as it may be, it's not quite such an arduous thought to comb back through areas for secrets and things you might have missed. In Elden Ring, forget about it. Practically every NPC side quest in the game, many of which are very significant in a number of ways, some of which even being crucial to some entire endings, follow a similar pattern. You meet someone, you spam dialogue with them until they have nothing new to say, then you part ways and they teleport to a random and inconspicuous part of the map. You'll have no way of knowing where they've gone and will only be able to continue their side quest should you have the fortune of bumping into them at whatever tiny spot in this huge open world they've chosen to occupy. Now of course, this is side content. It's not mandatory, and I have always loved and respected the way that FromSoft makes so much of their game's content so missable, lending to such a more palpable sense of mystery and discovery than almost any other modern games. However, I also think FromSoft are so uncompromising in Elden Ring's secretiveness that they fail to recognise how much the culture has changed since Dark Souls. There is too much media coming out all the time in the modern era for anyone to want to miss anything on a first go round anymore. No one has time to replay games, especially not one as big as this, because just a few months later, boom, there's a new God of War, boom, there's a new Pokemon, boom, there's a new rechargeable Hitachi Magic Wand 270. FromSoft failed to realise that the modern day gamers are the new cryptozoologists. Obsessive to the very end, unable to walk away until we're satisfied that we've scoured every inch of soil and inspected every leaf, and only then standing a chance of leaving that chapter of our lives behind, likely forever. Unless you go the other way and become a speedrunner, which is kind of like still looking for the Loch Ness Monster. And so in their pursuit of the knowledge required to ensure they haven't missed anything at any point before they move on forever, what do? They go online. And then, there they are. There's all the suggested articles down the side that spoil the game's endings and future bosses. There's the article continuing on past the simple step you wanted to see, explaining and spoiling all the things you're about to have to do. There's Prophasia Gaming and all the other cackling imps from the ninth circle of hell in your YouTube recommendations, just ruining your week. What talents do you have, Prophasia Gaming? What do you do with your life? Do you fight? I'd love to know if you fight. I can't be the only one who's had this experience. In looking up Blythe's side quest to try and figure out where I'm supposed to find him next, I was spoiled on the fact that I would eventually have to kill him, and was recommended guides on how to beat Lich Dragon Fortisax and how to achieve Rani's ending. Two things I did not know existed and did not wish to. FromSoft's unshakable commitment to the obtuse means that its game practically requires an online guide at multiple points, and practically requiring engagement with online discourse to have any sense of closure with elements of the game you've already invested a lot of time and mental energy into practically guarantees that your players will be spoiled on story and world elements that you've clearly gone pretty far out of your way to try and keep a surprise. It feels an unintended consequence of FromSoft's commitment to its frankly parodical levels of crypticness in Elden Ring in particular that it incentivizes the players to learn too much. This is without mentioning the matter of time spent not really playing the game that I mentioned earlier. One of the few times that an NPC even so much as suggests where they might be going next is the aforementioned Blythe side quest, where he hints that he'll be at Siofra River. If you've played the game, you'll hopefully agree with me that this is not enough. Siofra River is very big, and with no remotely specific location of Siofra River hinted at by Blythe, and with no quest markers and waypoints of any kind, which for the record I don't necessarily support, I'm just making a point, having an NPC allude to the idea that you'll next have to meet them in Siofra River is the equivalent of having a friend text you, "Meet me in China." I had already explored almost all of Siofra River by the time I had to meet Blythe there. I fast travelled back there, and when the time came, and I still could not find him anywhere, I spent upwards of 30 minutes galloping back over ground I'd already covered. I finally caved and looked up a walkthrough to end my misery, and that's how I got spoiled on the fact that there will be boss fights known as the Mimic Tier and the Valiant Gargoyles coming up. Guess where he is, by the way? Oh, I probably in the most non-specific place possible. Just hanging out, kind of near a tree, kind of near the edge of a small cliff, not really near any kind of notable landmarks, just vibing, blending into his surroundings. Why didn't you say anything, Blythe?
Why did you just watch me go?
Okay, so there's this weird push and pull thing going on with Elden Ring, right? Because the game conveniences you in so many more ways than other Soulsborne games, it feels comfortable simultaneously taking everything to the max. Its secretiveness goes to the point of parody, and some of the bosses, well, of course, bosses are the linchpin of these games, the moments of gameplay upon which they largely stake their reputation, and as is the case with everything else in this game, they are here taken to their logical extreme, or illogical extreme. Margit is an immediate and early example of this. He loves to play so coy at the start. "Oh, tee, look at me with my reactable attacks. I have punish windows. Ooh," and then bam, the old unreactable knife attack. The East London classic, if you will. That he sometimes does and sometimes just doesn't. Like, it feels totally random. Pattern recognition be damned. You can actually never really know if you have a punish window on this or so many other bosses in the game, because so many of them have this random unreactable attack they do during their supposed punish windows infrequently. The rematch with Margit when he's Morgoth is like fighting a boss that's controlled by a tap-dancing tarantula on a fucking DDR pad. This shit has less windows than prison, and I should know, I'm a window salesman. It is honestly kind of insane, the nonsense that this game pulls with some of its bosses. Radagon and Godfrey wind up for 5 years like you're in late game Shy Guy says in Mario Party. The Beast Clergyman has an attack that is literally faster than the human reaction time. The Godskin Noble has just started his roll attack. I'll keep you posted on that one. And then of course, there's Millennia. I'm going to give you guys a bit of life advice, okay? You don't need to beat Millennia. We're all very proud of you. You don't need to do this to yourself, alright? Confession time. I have not yet defeated Millennia, Blade of Miquella. I did not need to. I have a degree. I know what I'm capable of. I know if I put the time in, learned all the silly patterns, grinded out my stats enough and rammed my head into the wall for long enough, I could do it. I simply chose not to. There are so many things you could do with your time other than fighting Millennia, Blade of Miquella. You could go outside, you could breathe the air, reconnect with nature, consider our place in the universe, consult the ancient scrolls. You could meet someone, fall in love, have a child whom you project all your lost ambitions onto and live vicariously through, subscribe to the Hard Drive YouTube channel. You could do all that in the time it takes you to beat Millennia. Slut era, says Millennia, who takes all her clothes off in the second phase and becomes the most obnoxious boss in FromSoft history. Is it impressive to beat this boss? Or is it not just a little bit weird? You could be out there curing diseases, and yet here you are. If you learned how to avoid waterfowl dance by yourself through trial and error, I think you should be detained. Waterfowl dance is a bioweapon. Waterfowl dance was developed in a lab with the sole purpose of eradicating gamers. There are government employees whose incompetence caused the top floor of my house to burn down when I was 10 years old, and I would not wish waterfowl dance upon them. Still going. Millennia beautifully illustrates my point. Elden Ring truly thinks that because it gave you a hand job, it can break up with you over Facebook. Well, unfortunately, it was right. This is a satire site. These reviews are supposed to be more comedy than they are actual reviews, and yet this game has incited from me a response passionate enough that I fear I haven't even met my joke quota in the 20 plus minutes this video has been going for. Allow me to attempt to rectify that now. Elden Ring is big. How big? Well, I couldn't fit it in my asshole. Still going. And while much of my time in this ridiculously huge game was spent wandering aimlessly or having unreactable knives pulled on me when there was supposed to be a punish window, more of it was spent gawking at the most unbelievable, detailed architecture yet committed to this medium. Carefully considering my options, intense and satisfying combat encounters, and talking to a giant turtle who wore a Pope hat and had a very funny voice.
If you find my giant becoming beautiful, I welcome you.
Elden Ring slapped my ass a lot, just how I like it. And when it broke up with me over Facebook, I didn't cry because it was over. I smiled because it happened. This has been the Hard Drive review of Elden Ring. Subscribe for the more that you clearly need from your favourite voracious content-ridden dystopia, and consume, for you know nothing else. I'll see you next time, and yes, he's still going. Remember to check out Hard Drive and all our socials and the associated links in the description, and also myself at Fudge on Twitter. Today's edition of Fudge's post-video poetry will be a bit shorter because the video went long, but I hope you enjoy it all the same. This one's called If I Were a Bird. If I were a bird, I'd be a falcon, observant and ready to strike. I'd fly above the home of my ex-best friend Malcolm and shit all over his bike. Hope you enjoyed. See you soon.